A drone attack conducted earlier today in the outskirts of Shira wounded 2 civilians. Casualties are currently receiving treatment at Shira Hospital. Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have also shelled the town on Monday, claiming the lives of 2 children. Repeated shelling of the district of Irob in eastern Tigray has resulted in the death of 7 civilians and the injury of 27 others. According to the governor of the district, Tesfai Kahsai, Eritrean forces continue to bombard Dohan, Alitana, and other towns in the district. Miron Yaman reports.
Eritrean forces continue to conduct heavy artillery shelling in different parts of Tigray following the new wave of invasion alongside the Ethiopian forces in late August. Administrator of the Irob, Eastern Tigray, Tesfai Kahsai says Eritrean forces have shelled the district over 200 times and caused the death of 7 civilians and the injury of 27 others.
So far, 7 fatalities have been recorded. Figure of the wounded have reached 27. Heavy artilleries are also being conducted in Dohan and its surroundings, in Alitana and its surroundings, and other areas in other districts. On the 17th of September 2022, Eritrean forces bombed the district 78 times. On the 19th, 118 times. This is without including the attacks on the 8th of October and afterwards.
The administrator also stated that the attacks by the Eritrean forces continue to cause the destruction of public and private properties, exacerbating the already devastated infrastructure of the district.
9 public infrastructures are destroyed. 45 homes of civilians have been also destroyed.
Victims of the attacks also say the intent behind these indiscriminate shellings is to annihilate the people of Irob.
The attacks were conducted on civilians' residential areas. The intent is known. It is to eliminate the people of Irob.
These shellings were also conducted on public infrastructures including health facilities. This shows you that they don't even want us to get treatment after the attacks.
Eritrean forces have conducted shellings on September 17th on Igala, central Tigray, killing a 5-year-old child and wounding several others.
Epidemic patterns of childhood diseases such as measles seen in Tigray. Deputy Head of Bureau of Health Dr. Isaiah says reports coming from hospitals in Tigray show vaccine-preventable diseases might be occurring as outbreaks and epidemics. The deputy head also emphasizes that vaccination for children in Tigray has completely been stopped for 6 months now. Let's take a look at the report. Deadly childhood diseases such as measles and pertussis are on the rise in Tigray following the destruction of more than 80% of its health system and the comprehensive siege that has denied the entry of basics such as vaccinations. Deputy Head for Bureau of Health, Dr. Isaiah says, reports coming from some districts across Tigray indicate that such diseases might be occurring as epidemics in recent times.
Now in Tigray there are a lot of cases that pop up because of this system and destruction of the system and because of the siege. For example, we can see more than 10 waradas of Tigray. We show an epidemic of measles. There were reports from more than 10 waradas. And then there are also pertussis cases. We can see from 2 spots, hospitals, health facilities, like, for example, the report from Al Hospital and Aida Referral Hospital told us more than 56 children are affected by pertussis. And we are also getting acute flaccid paralysis, possibly polio, where the international community is solid enough to eradicate from the world. But we are seeing, though we can confirm because of the siege and the destruction, but we are seeing polio-like cases. We call them acute flaccid paralysis.
The deputy head states that vaccinations for children in Tigray have been completely stopped for 6 months since May, leading to an increased mortality of children under 5.
It's been more than 6 months that the Tigray's children are not getting vaccine at all. This is so sad. The mortality rate for under 5 is currently 59 per 1,000 lives. When we compare this with the past, it was like before the war, for example, it was 30 per 1,000. The major cause for, if you take, for example, the under 5 mortality, and then most of them, the cause are one, this prenatal asphyxia, prematurity, and vaccine preventable diseases like pertussis, measles, diarrhea, pneumonia, and others. This means, for example, if you take the prenatal asphyxia and prematurity, this was prevented by undergoing antenatal care, postnatal care, and intervening if there is any medical needs during that period of time. And those pertussis and diarrheal disease and pneumonia, what have you, which we call them vaccine preventable disease, by vaccinated child, we can prevent those diseases. But here in Tigray, there is no vaccine.
Dr. Ray says years of hard work has been reversed by the war, and diseases that had once been controlled are yet again posing a threat to the community.
For the start of the war, we were almost controlled majority of this vaccine preventable disease. It was like a 1 or 2 case reports, and it was, as I said, an exemplary for the country. It was a benchmark, and particularly for vaccine, it becomes a culture of the society.
The deputy head warns diseases that had once been eradicated with a tremendous amount of effort can yet again devastate the world if the international community fails to act on the situation in Tigray.
Then cases can be built up into outbreaks, epidemics, and finally it can be pandemics. So the international community have no any information about what in Tigray is happening, and what the situation, what the disease status, and what have you. So I urge the international community to open his eyes and even concern about himself that this region might be the source of pandemics if we can't intervene as early as possible.
Tigray opposition parties wrote an open letter to the African Union Commission stating that the AU is ill-equipped to unilaterally lead the negotiation process in its current form. The parties expressed their deep concerns on the ability of the AU to lead the negotiation process without correcting fundamental structural problems of the organization. Abel Zagav reports.
In an open letter written to the AU Commission, opposition parties in Tigray stated that the Ethio-Tigray War, which is direct or indirect involvement of multiple forces from within and outside the continent, is one of the deadliest in the 21st century, characterized by human rights abuses, war crimes, and crime against humanity on a daily basis amounting to unprecedented genocide. The Maghreb-based opposition parties said the siege, which is deliberately violating the international humanitarian law, is explicably worsening the human catastrophe in the region. Besides, the party criticized the reluctance and unconstructive role of the AU in tabling the problems of the parties to the conflict that has put millions of Tigrayans' lives at stake. They added that the AU hasn't demonstrated a due concern and has failed to explain what the crimes committed by the invading Eritrean army are. The recent saga created by the organization in regard to convening peace talks in South Africa is characterized by not enough experience of organized mediations, nor having the tools necessary to influence and enforce whatever accord is reached by the negotiation parties. The parties TIP, Sawet, and Baitona, who were involved in the 6th round regional election held in September of 2020, also questioned AU's impartiality as the organization had once called the campaign a law enforcement operation.
With the resumption of hostilities, the food aid that used to trickle into Tigray has been completely blocked. Accordingly, Tigrayan children are exposed to severe acute malnutrition, and treatment remains unavailable as many hospitals in the region have run out of essential medical supplies. Aragai Gabriel Mikhail has more.
Maaza Gabriel lives in Ma'alam, a small village outside of Mekelle, the capital of Tigray. Before the start of the war on Tigray, Maaza used to lead a normal life from the income she earns working on her small farm. However, currently, she says that she and her family are living in a very devastating situation as they are forced to sell out their belongings to get through these dark days.
Before the start of the war, we had a normal life. But after the war broke out, there were no more job opportunities, and now we're forced to sell out all our belongings to make it out alive.
According to Maaza, her 1 year and 6 months old son, who was A very healthy child is now suffering from an acute malnutrition, now worse than ever, as she couldn't be able to provide him with the necessary meal.
He used to walk by himself because he was quite a healthy child, but currently, he's not even able to sit on his own properly. Moreover, his body weight is deteriorating, and he has swellings in different parts of his body, his leg, his hands, and his face as well. It breaks my heart to see my son living in such a pain.
Sister Jambar Mammo, a coordinator of the pediatric center at Mekelle Hospital, said that her life has become a permanent tragedy along with the suffering of each patient, as she couldn't be able to help them due to the depletion of medical supplies at her hospital.
I'm troubled and so stressed out with each of patients who come here because I have an obligation of keeping my oath as a medical worker to help and relieve people in their sickness. As a result, I happen to be living under a lot of pressure and stress every day. This is happening because I'm not able to help my patients due to lack of medical supplies at the hospital.
Our reporter Haile Gabru had a brief stay with experts who discussed about the silence of the international community in the war on Tigray, despite it seeing violations of human rights and atrocity crimes amounting to genocide. Let's see the report.
Gruesome atrocities have been continued to be committed in western Tigray, under which the Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have continued their occupation, killing, torturing, and leading Tigrayans into further displacement. Tsagai Brahana, an associate professor of law at Mekelle University, and Megabe Brahana Tesfai Hadra, dean for St. Freminatos Theological College, have this to say on the matter.
International leaders, the international community is being silent. Regardless of they say every day, we're concerned about Tigray, we're concerned about children, we're concerned about this and that. But in realistic, there is no practical action. The world becomes silent. Not only the world, but even the international religions, particularly the World Council of Church. The reason why is, particularly international laws, by their very nature, are weak in implementation.
In international law, there is no authoritative body that takes action, So the power is not like, there's no monopoly of power. So power is dispersed among the state actors.
They say that, though the people of Tigray have been victims of a genocidal war declared by the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments, the international community chose to stand by witnessing reports of gross human rights violations released by the Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch.
Genocide is not a new thing in the world, Genocide has been done in the traditional international epoch at different times, at different places, for different reasons. Some reasons could be religious grounds for genocide. In some cases, they could be ethnic grounds, ethnic reasons,
It was a promise or out of the international communities that they say never again. It's just to condemn the genocide all over the world. In whatsoever reason, in whatsoever justification, genocide will not be repeated again. That was their slogan. However, practically, even in the case of Tigray, look, we are almost in a genocidal war for 2 years, but no action. Actually, they can organize the human rights, the investigation commission, like that. They have such trials, but it's up to now they do not call it by its name, genocide.
They also discussed on the fact that the people of Tigray are suffering due to the color of their skin, quoting Dr. Tedros Adhanom's WHO's Director General speech.
The conflict in Ukraine, since the conflict in Ukraine began, very shortly, in a very swift manner, the international community has started to take reaction, Imagine there was a conflict in Tigray, the genocidal war in Tigray. They were silent, like what we have been saying.
All international laws are enacted regardless of race, regardless of political opinion, regardless of black and white, regardless of language, religion, and the like. They are equal for everybody, for every citizen. However, in practice, I don't think that the the international community has the right attitude towards black and white.
Lastly, they also underscored the importance of fostering wise diplomacy in the international political arena to promote peace and stability in the country.
Everything may not be solved by militarily, so we have to show to the world diplomatically that we are the victims. Yeah, we are the victims of genocide.
That's all for the news hour. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.